So let's talk a little bit about drawing hair, and then from a couple of notes and suggestions about drawing hair, because I think it's important to have a discussion about that at this point, we'll go on and have a discussion about using some different kinds of lighting. Here we go. So every once in a while, I might get a nice compliment from someone who says something like, hey, I like the way you draw hair. Hair's so hard for me. Well, I appreciate the compliment, but frankly, hair is not that hard to draw. At least it doesn't have to be. And so we're at a point where we can have a brief conversation about hair. And I would just want to point out something about drawing hair. Frankly, we don't have to have a long discussion about drawing hair because it follows exactly the same principles that we've been discussing all along. One way that hair is a little bit different than rendering what's happening in the flesh tone in the skin is that hair tends to have a little bit more of a sheen to it. It's a little bit shinier than skin is in general. What that means is there'll be a little bit more of a contrast between the highlights and between the halftones in the hair. The highlights might be a little bit brighter. They reflect a little bit more light right back to your eyes rather than diffusing light in a matte way. Let me just zoom in here. So what do we get? We get light hitting the form and then curving away into halftone. Then we have light hitting the form again, and then it curves away into halftone and then to shadow as the form turns here. Big forms that go from highlight to halftone to shadow, highlight to halftone to shadow. It's really simple, guys. We just follow that, I almost said formula, I don't want to say formula, but we follow that process to get the hair to turn in space. And then we add, there's these little bits and doodads and little bits of hair that break from the form. But if we get that big overall form that we're seeing here, and then we add the breaks and the variation to it, drawing hair becomes fairly easy. Simple statement and then adding the complexity on top of that. Same principles that we've been talking about all along. There is one thing that's a little bit different about hair as well, and that is that there's a translucency to hair in the sense that the nature of hair, of course, is that light can pass through it in a way that wouldn't happen, of course, with skin. That just means, we'll zoom in again here, it just means that in some places in the shadow, where it's right next to light, the shadows will be a little bit lighter. For instance, we have light hitting strongly here, passing through, and so the shadow right here is a little lighter because some of that light passes right through. So we get some lighter tone here, we get some lighter tone here, some lighter tone here. You especially see it here as the light passes through, gives that nice soft glow that is representative of hair. Hope that helps for your rendering of hair. And now let's move on to light.